Hi there everyone, it's me, Tori D. And today is going to be my first budget with me for YNAB. This is going to be my first December paycheck of 2022. I have a couple things that I want to budget into the future, and then a couple things that have moved around in my life in December that I need to make adjustments to. So as you can see, we're currently sitting here with my paycheck ready to assign at $1883.55 for December 2022. This is after all my deductions. I also put 10% of my regular paychecks into retirement, so that's sitting there without this. So I'm a big believer in budgeting ahead as my form of an emergency fund. So we'll see here that I have $2,500 assigned in January, which is what I anticipate needing for January of 2023. I'm super sensitive to the amount of money that I have going with me, also because I have some big adjustments coming up, so I want to make sure that I'm funding those as much as I can. So what I'm going to do is, for the month of December, actually be budgeting ahead into February of 2023. So for my needed obligations, I'm going to be budgeting half of them in most places. A couple places I'll be funding the full amount. So my mortgage at that point is going to be $500. That is not my full mortgage, that's half of the mortgage, but that's also with paying a little bit more every month towards the mortgage. Total utilities, electric, water, sewer, internet, trash. I am anticipating between what I use monthly and then having to pay for heating oil, needing about $400 a month for that. Transportation, I usually put $100 in for each month, just in case. So I work remotely, but I do have to occasionally go into my office for the company that I work for, which is 120 miles round trip each time. I do drive a very fuel efficient car, but if I have to make multiple of those trips in a month, it can eat that up pretty quickly. This is car insurance. It's actually going to be, at this point, my car insurance and my home insurance, which I have budgeted about $250 for. So whenever we cut that in half, that's going to be $125. Groceries, looking at about $250 per month. So I'm going to need $125 there. I do pay currently for a storage unit, so I'll put $50 towards that $74. Down payment and land fund, don't need to add anything there. Student loan payment still is not, will not be due in February, and I'm also currently enrolled in a PhD program, so my loans are actually deferred because of that. And then not anticipating putting into my brokerage investments there. For dining out with a target of $120, I'm going to put $75 in there, and I'm going to put $20 into my fun money and treats. So next in my other categories, I'm just going to look down here where things may need filled back up. So here, I'm actually going to wait and do this in my current month in December. I'm just checking to see if there's anything I need to assign kind of ahead of time. Each month I try to budget about $150, if not more, to my travel, and then $50 towards crafts each month. So you can see those are kind of building up into February, but just really want to keep an eye on those. Then all of my subscriptions, I'm just going to fund them totally. So that's going to put us with $355 even back into my ready to assign. Just kind of going down my list here, AAA, since it's due in January, I'm just going to put what was assigned the previous month because we'll roll that back over. Everything here looks as it should. So we are now going to go back to today. So now I have $349.17 ready to assign. I have completely forgotten who I picked this up from on YouTube, but it has completely changed my budgeting game. So pulling up the financial goals that I do have and making sure what I want to be focusing on is the first thing I'm seeing in my budget. Like I'm seeing it before I see my mortgage or my car insurance. So really being able to focus on those. So right now, my goals, my three main goals, are getting my emergency fund up to $5,000. My mom and I are going to be taking a cruise to New England and Canada next September. So I'm looking at about $5,000 there that I'd like to have saved up before the cruise. And then right now I have listed I need $5,000 to pay out to finish my dissertation for my PhD coursework. But actually I was conspiring with a friend last weekend and realized that through a combination of my required credits for my dissertation and the way that my work does their tuition reimbursement, I may actually be able to take my estimated out-of-pocket down from $4,500 to about $2,500, which is great news for me, considering at my previous job I was expecting to pay about $12,000 out of pocket for the dissertation versus now where I'll be paying less than $3,000. So anyway, as we kind of look at my goals, since the emergency fund is that one that I want to look at first, I'm going to add all of the $349.17 into the emergency fund. So that takes me down to all money being assigned, and I always just check over here in the right hand column, assigned next month, assigned in February. That's looking good there. Now, I did mention that there were some things that were going to need adjustments in the month of December. So as you can see, I don't have anything budgeted for my utilities this month, and that's because this mortgage up here is for a house I have not yet bought. So I am currently working through the process of buying my childhood home off of my parents. And so we have hit a couple snags with some contractor work, redoing the loan type, had some issues with an appraisal and the information that came back. So we were initially anticipated to close on that house next week, right before Christmas, but instead that is going to be being pushed back to January at the earliest. So what that means for me is that means I don't have a mortgage payment this month, which is definitely something I didn't anticipate having. You'll also notice here my groceries right now are only at $50. Since I'm currently working on buying my childhood home off of my parents, I am also staying with them and kind of giving them cash and those sorts of things. But I don't necessarily have all of the traditional expenses that one would expect if they were living on their own, which has been a real blessing and has really given me the opportunity to save a lot of money in the last couple months since I moved home in April. So as I'm looking to make some adjustments, I'm just checking down here through the rest of my categories. So dining out looks good, fun, money, and treats still looking good this time of the month. Then what I do want to adjust is I did have to spend a little bit of money out of one of my buffer categories. So I'm going to make sure that's filled back up. I also, during November, had to spend a chunk of my giving budget every year for Christmas. A charity near our house does an angel tree, and so I always make sure I get an angel tree kid to give them some gifts for Christmas. So with that's $250. I'm going to actually make sure that's funded about halfway at $125 is kind of the goal there. Let's see. This one is yellow. I'm also looking to take my dad to New York City in March of 24. I do have a goal on there right now, but it isn't in my priorities list, so it will move up once that priority kind of gets adjusted. I also have a marathon coming up, so I have spent a little bit of money out of both of my sports categories, and so I want to make sure that those are filled back up. I cannot do math. I was trying to do mental math and talk at the same time, but I want to make sure all of those are filled up so that whenever another race or opportunity presents itself, I can take advantage of that. All of my subscriptions and everything down here are in progress, so that leaves me with moving that mortgage amount. That leaves me with over $770 left to assign, and so I am just going to add all of that to the emergency fund category. So in one fell swoop, my emergency fund amount went from $1,000 and $1,005 to over $2,100 with a goal of $5,000. That's really good news. The other thing that I'm kind of thinking about as I look at my budget is obviously if I'm hoping to, take over and have the house closing and everything, all of my categories for the month of January, I just want to check and make sure that everything is the way it should be. Everything is green except for that one that doesn't matter at the moment. But with that being the case, everything is looking good there. I'm excited about adjustments to the focus areas, really getting the opportunity to put money into my emergency fund and kind of build it back up. One of the things I am considering, so I do have money in my down payment and land fund category, and I also have money in my home and garden category. I'm hoping to cash flow as many renovations to the house as possible. Technically, I know I could move some of the money out of either of those categories to top off that emergency fund, but right now I'm kind of keeping them assigned to their original categories of down payment and home and garden, just because I really want to make sure that if I need to purchase flooring or if I need to pay for labor to complete certain tasks, that is where it's assigned first. Because as soon as I know myself, as soon as I move it over to my emergency fund, I am not going to want to touch it. But the original purpose of that money is to help with the renovations. Eventually, it's probably number 6 or 7 on my priority list right now, but as a single person who will be a homeowner here shortly, $5,000 doesn't feel like quite enough for an emergency fund. So I'm really hoping eventually to take that up to $10,000 and really have that in a high yield savings account. So I have that opportunity there. But right now, using $5,000 is a good benchmark, and then allowing myself to work on the rest of my goals there. So I appreciate you spending some time with me, whatever time of day it is for you. This is something I hope to be doing about every 2 weeks to really keep myself accountable to my financial goals in particular. That is something that I love to talk about, and I love to chat about it as often as I can. I love talking shop when it comes to personal finance, budgeting, and figuring out what makes things work for us when it comes to our financial life. So I appreciate you taking the time, and I hope you have a great rest of your day whenever it may be.